Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Melody Gracia, and I serve as an NXUnite team member at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is Empowering Schools, Approaches to Fundraising and Growth. And as usual, before I introduce today's panelists and we jump into this fascinating topic, I do have some quick logistics to cover. NXUnite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cost-driven podcasts. NXUnite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks with me here today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So at any time during the panel, please feel free to drop your questions on the questions tab, or you can drop them in the chat if you want, and we'll get to them during the second half of the session. Now, if you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, my team member Anton is in the chat under the Team NXUnite username, ready to assist you the best he can. I also wanted to share that this panel is being recorded, so if you have people can continue to register and access the recording after the panel. If you have any friends in the industry you want to share the insights from this panel with, simply send them that same registration page and they will be able to access the recording. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I want to thank you all for attending this panel. Whether you're attending live or watching the recording, we're very excited to be in touch with you, the mission-driven community. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today to learn from these outstanding experts who we'll now finally introduce. I'd like to first introduce Claire Richards, who is the co-founder and CEO of a startup called Impacts, which supports parents and educators in accessing critical school supplies. Claire is a creative by trade with a strong love for building vibrancy through action and storytelling. Claire, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Also with us is Maggie Machado, who is the marketing director at Get Movin Fundraising. She spearheads campaigns that uplift schools and organizations in their fundraising missions, from devising comprehensive marketing plans to utilizing data analytics for tailored campaigns. Her approach is always geared towards magnifying impact. Maggie, so glad you could join us.
Thank you. I'm excited for today.
Also with us is Roger Devine, who is a partner and marketing director at School Auction. He's an experienced marketing professional with a focus on helping small businesses, technology startups, and nonprofit organizations. Roger has extensive experience in the software, merchant processing, and publishing industries. Thanks for joining us, Roger.
Thanks, Malou. Glad to be back.
And finally with us is TJ McGovern, who is the founder and president of MCG Consulting Group. He's a nonprofit coach, trainer, consultant, and speaker with 25 years of experience in development, strategic visioning, campaign management, and major gift solicitation. TJ, thanks for joining us. Oh, you're muted.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, now it's finally time to hear from our panelists. And Maggie, I'll have you start us off with the first question. How can schools motivate parents and community members to actively contribute and support classrooms?
Yeah, so I will kick us off here. And I think this is a good question to begin with, because I think it's interesting you say classrooms. because it really is bringing it to kind of the heart of the issue, which is parents, community members, they are far more likely to donate to an individual or a classroom goal rather than an overall kind of overwhelming school goal. So you still have your overall school goal, but it's about the delivery of that goal. How are you communicating it? How are you breaking it up into something a little bit more achievable where individuals can feel like they're really making a difference? So that's, I think, something that's important to remember. An example of this is if I give $50 to a $20,000 goal, I'm not going to really feel like I'm making that much of a difference there, right? But if I'm donating $50 to get my son over the finish line and meet his donation goal, then I'm going to feel really good about myself and I'm going to continue to give. So it's a little bit psychological, you know, it's kind of bringing it back to individuals and really thinking about your donors and what's going to motivate them. And what often motivates them is that emotional tie. And so that's why with what we have at Get Movin Fundraising is called Fund Hub. So that's the online platform that we offer schools. And we have on there personalized student fundraising web pages, classroom web pages, so that there's a place for donors to go to really kind of access it at that individual or class level. So that's what I would say for there, that emotional tie, that's really important not to forget about, even if you're talking about big numbers that you're trying to raise.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for starting us off, Maggie. Roger, I'm going to bring the same question over to you. Any tips on how to motivate parents and community members to actively contribute and support classrooms?
Yeah, I want to build on what Maggie said there because she started us off in exactly the right way here. Parents are going to contribute more to things that they're going to see a tangible result on and a result that is going to matter to them and their family. So in addition to focusing your fundraising on things that, have a tangible, visible effect on the classroom, when you do go to tackle some of those larger goals for the school community itself, you have to bring some of the same ideas with you. You have to bring in a lot of storytelling. You have to demonstrate results. You have to, demonstrate plans of action there. You have to be able to talk about the fact that this is going to have an impact. This is going to affect your kid, that's out there. And that needs to be the core part of the story that's out there. When it comes to nonprofit fundraising, schools are in a kind of a funny place because we want to do good for all of the kids in the school, of course, but we also have this little hidden agenda that we really, really, really want to do good for our kid. And that's a big motivating factor there. So you don't necessarily want to overplay to that. It could seem a little crass, but it is something to keep in mind as you're putting your plans together there.
Thanks, Roger. All right, TJ, over to you. How can schools motivate the community to actively contribute and support?
I can say that no one likes to talk about money, but people really want to make a difference. So, there's 400 billion plus given away each year in the United States. And if you connect with people on how they can make a difference and how their investment will help increase the impact, in this case for students, that's a great place to have dialogue. And my whole philosophy changed probably about 12 years ago when I stopped studying fundraising tactics, which are tried and true. And then I had the privilege of talking to donors, investors on behalf of clients, and they're tired of them. And I started studying philanthropy, about why people give. And that's just a good feeling on the fundraising side, and then of course the investor side.
Thanks, TJ. All right, Claire, final thoughts on how schools motivate parents and the community to actively contribute and participate.
Yeah, thank you. I would echo what all three of my co-panelists have said in many ways. I think there is the tactical side, like how are you distributing this messaging? How are you distributing the end goal of what those donations will result in, and how are you tailoring that message based on the audience you're targeting. How you would target parents in that school ecosystem would be different than a corporate sponsor, would be different than other nonprofits in a community, right? And how you tailor and deliver that message really matters. But all three, TJ, Maggie, Roger, are spot on. This is a psychological and deeply rooted experience for any donor. And we have to be able to connect with those people on that level. And so when I think about parents, I do think they are in it for their child. And Roger, you said it's crass. I don't know if it's crass, and I don't even know that we need to say it out loud, but if we know that, if we internalize that, then we're able to tailor the messaging accordingly. Because at the end of the day, we know that if all of the students in the classroom are supported, your student will do better. Like, that is a proven fact. And so one of the things that we've tried to do as a company, so we sell kits and parents can buy these kits and they're everything their kid needs tailored. It's great. It's convenient. It's a good product. But the social impact comes from donation. So the parent has the option to donate, and we match a portion of those donations if they do. And so what we're trying to do is incentivize parents to take that action and to see that bigger picture.
Wonderful. Thanks, Claire. All right, we're off to a great start. And TJ, I'll have you start us off with the next question. How do schools navigate the shift in giving behavior among the new generation of parents and community members?
Yeah, I often talk about that. I call it the changing philanthropic landscape, that people are very discerning now about where their philanthropy is going and how they choose the organization. So the way I like to say it is, if you're intentional about building communities of shared purpose and inviting people into that, and then really communicating what their philanthropic dollars are doing for those served, that's a great start. I'll just kind of qualify that with a great story. I was talking to a very large 7-figure donor to a client, and he said, TJ, I love this organization. I don't have time to do what they're doing in the change that they're making in the world. That's why I give them all the money that I do. That just really clarified everything when I'm out in the field talking to donors on behalf of clients. So.
Thanks, TJ. All right, Claire, over to you. What can schools do to navigate the shifts in giving behavior?
Oh man, there are a lot of changes happening generationally. So one of my side interests, or side quests, as I've come to understand, that's what the kids call it, right? It's your side quest. But one of the things I'm really interested in is this new generation coming in, and we even have Gen Z parents. So we've got millennial parents, Gen Z parents, and the behaviors are so different. And so what I've done outside of impacts is some research, speaking, consulting on intergenerational communication, more so in the workplace, but I think a lot of those lessons do impact the ways we understand the changing K-12 demographics. And one of the things that has come up again and again is the fact that millennials and Gen Z as a whole tend to be motivated by outcomes, not input. So if you think about the working world 30 years ago, how do you become super successful? How do you get the corner office? You put in a lot of time. You get there early, you leave late, and you show your dedication through that, right? But that's not really how the world works anymore. Now we are much more focused on the outcomes. Who cares how long you've worked? Were the goals achieved? I think that same mentality impacts every area of our life. So when you talk about, especially parents, maybe you have parent volunteers that are helping you with the organization of these fundraisers. They want high impact and low effort opportunities to raise money. And so if you think of a bake sale, that's not going to be as appealing to them anymore because it is a high level of effort with low outcomes. And I think the challenge being that some of those really high output opportunities maybe aren't as fun, quote unquote, right? We know that the most effective way to fundraise is usually through direct asks and not events, but events are a lot more fun. So it's finding that balance and how do you engage parents, especially parent volunteers, in a way that will keep them motivated. I think that's the challenge in front of everyone.
Thanks, Claire. All right, Maggie, same question over to you. Any strategies in navigating the shifts in giving behaviors?
Yeah, well, what Claire was saying about making it easy to get involved, that was kind of a sub point to her sort of bigger thing she was saying. I would say that's definitely what we have found. So I'm a millennial parent, so I can, the data is there. I agree with it. If I can do something while I'm getting my coffee, I will do that thing. And so what we have to understand is these parents have grown up on the internet, and also we're in a post-COVID world, which also everything shifted after COVID. Everything went online. And so now we're post-COVID, and everybody still has the expectations of what we had in COVID, which is I should be able to do everything from my phone. If it is not accessible via my phone, you've probably lost my donation. Because like Claire is saying, I do want the outcome, but I do not have the time to go do a bake sale. So that is the thing that I would say is definitely making sure that you have the technology, that you're leveraging technology, and that you're meeting donors where they're already at, which is on their phone. And so you want to make sure you're checking boxes. Mobile friendly, social media integration is a huge thing. If I go to try to share the fundraiser on Facebook and it looks all weird and like I'm not going to do that. But if I can click one button and boom, there it is, and then I can post it and reach my entire network of friends and family, well, there you go. Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I can do that while I'm cooking dinner. So like that's what this idea that, the current generation of parents have always had a million things to do, but now we have this tool with technology, this kind of window, this opening. And if you're not leveraging that for your fundraiser, you're really missing out. Because that's where your donors and where your parents are. And then the last thing here that I did want to say is also through technology, being able to show real-time progress. So Claire, this goes back to what you're saying about outcomes. And this is what I was saying about, I want to see the immediate impact of my donation. So what we have on FundHub is we have donation meters. And those are on individual student pages, they're on the classroom pages, and they're on the entire school page. So you can see, I can go on there and give a donation. I can immediately see that little donation meter rise, and it's so satisfying. And it's such another little psychological thing, but I'm telling you, it works. And so you got to meet donors where they're at, and what they want is quick, easy, mobile friendly, integrated with what they're already doing in their daily lives.
I just want to put a little exclamation point on that. Maggie, that is spot on. It probably goes without saying, but if the primary way you're collecting donations is via check, I'm telling you, none of my millennial friends own a checkbook. And even if they go to a bank to get you can get individual checks, they wouldn't know how to fill it out without Googling it. Okay. So it's like being very responsive to their buying behaviors, integrating with Venmo, things like that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Thanks, Maggie and Claire. Roger, what would you like to add?
I make it fun here. Everything that's been said has been on this question has been valid and worth bringing into your planning process here, but I'm going to say that it's not adequate. In addition to thinking about macro trends across the country, across the timeline here, the other thing you've got to do is you really do have to do the work of understanding not millennials, not people these days, but your school community. You're going to be raising money from, if we're going to talk about a K-12 as kind of a target here, you're going to be talking about raising money from somewhere between 100 and 400 people in a given a year there. That's not an unreasonable number of people to try to understand the behavior of. It's this kind of fundraising where we're fundraising for a specific community in a geographic region is going to mean that there's no one size fits all solution. One of the things that happened in my particular slice of the fundraising world about, I don't know, about 15 years ago was that with regards to silent auctions, everything moved from paper bid sheets to mobile bidding, bidding on your smartphone. Great. Okay, terrific. I'm still selling to organizations that want to run silent auctions with paper bid sheets because in their community, that is the appropriate and effective technology that their donors, that their supporters want to use. So in addition to being aware of all of the big macro trends that are out there and bringing those into your thinking, you got to do the homework of understanding your community.
Thanks, Roger. All right, very quickly, I'd like to remind our live audience to start submitting your questions at any time, and we'll get to them during the second half of the session. All right, here's our next question. And Claire, I'll have you start us off with this one. What role does customization and personalization play in modern school fundraising, and how can it impact the success of these initiatives?
I think I won't speak too long on this because I don't think it's my exact area of expertise, but exactly as Roger said, it really does depend on the market you're serving, and how you tailor that message is super important. So you can leverage technology to do person by person customization, and that's great. But even on a broader level, how are you tailoring the messaging based on who you're targeting within the school? How you talk to parents is different than schools, is different than grandparents, is different than community stakeholders, businesses, nonprofits, etc. So I think the customization is when you deliver this message to your parents, a text might make the most sense. To a community stakeholder, going to a board meeting and presenting might be the best way to get that message across. And so it goes beyond what technology can provide.
Thanks, Claire. All right, TJ, on to you. Any insights on the role of customization and personalization in modern school fundraising?
I think a lot of organizations exist in a vacuum, and they talk to themselves and don't have intention about getting to know their own donors in a variety of ways. So one of the ways that I love co-creating with clients is a constituent survey where you can ask some of these questions. Do you like to give by check, or do you like to give online, or do you like to respond to a text? And you get to know them and create unique engagement offers based on that information from the survey. And then, just being intentional about feedback loops. I think sometimes all organizations, and particularly schools, they over solicit but under inform. And so people are longing to learn, even if it's just a simple visual of what their $25 did to help you get to that goal. That will carry a long way.
Thanks, DJ. All right, Roger, over to you. Anything you want to add to the role of customization and personalization in modern school fundraising?
I'm going to take another little side tactic here. I want to customize and personalize, or I want to emphasize the need to customize, personalize, not your outreach to individual parents, but your fundraising mix overall. Inside a school year, you're going to have a wide variety of parents. They're going to belong to different socioeconomic statuses. They're going to have different kids at different points along their educational journey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to find different types of fundraising moments appealing. Some people are going to be all in on an event. Some people are only going to do fundraising that is going to affect their kids' classroom. Some are going to be more are going to have a bigger picture there. So when it comes to personalizing and customization, again, I'm sorry, I'm making more work for you here. But at the beginning of your school year, if you're running a PTA here, or you're the fundraising chair, one of the things you should think about is that there are no one size fits all fundraisers for parents. So customize your mix. Have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different elements, legs to the stool on your fundraising mix there. There you go.
Thanks, Roger. All right, Maggie, over to you. What are your thoughts on the role of customization and personalization in modern school fundraising?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny, Roger just apologized because I was kind of thinking as our viewers might be hearing us being like, okay, I do not have the time to draft 5 different versions of the same email for all of my. We recognize it feels like that's a lot of work what we're asking, and I think what all of us are saying is what Roger just said. No school is the same. You're not going to be the same size, demographic, region. You're not going to have the same purpose as some other organization for why you're raising money. It's just about being aware of who are your different target audiences. We've worked with schools before where they've only really focused on getting the kids excited. Awesome. I love it. Super fun. You're missing teachers. You're missing the parents. You're missing the uncle in Nebraska who would definitely give a huge donation, but you're not getting the social media integration. So it's about, I think, sourcing help. I mean, it's not all on your own. So like what we offer with schools, we offer a lot of automated custom stuff. So like our platform feeds into dynamic flyers, which then you can go in and maybe, change out a few things, but like the bulk of the work is done. So that's really, I think, what we're trying to do in our different fields and through our different businesses is be that support. So you're not feeling like it's all on you. And so I would just encourage, I think sometimes school groups, because they feel maybe small, or maybe you come from a certain socioeconomic area, you feel like, oh, we can't afford, like a company to help us. But a lot of what our type of business has moved into is a lot of like virtual type of help and solutions. And so, I mean, we used to go to schools and do like full service fun runs, but to the point everyone's making, that didn't work for everybody. And so I think a lot of what you can find now, if you do the research, are a lot of tools that make the job easy for you while still making it effective to reach all of your different target audiences.
Fantastic. Thanks, Maggie. All right, Roger, here's our next question. How has technology transformed the landscape of K-12 fundraising, and what role does online engagement play in reaching a broader community?
It's a great transition from where we just were. And, Maggie said what I want to say on this question. How has technology transformed the landscape? It's made the execution of these plans easier. It has. There's a lot, everybody on the call here, we've all got our businesses. We're out here to help you here. Many of us are doing so with technology-based tools to do that. And it's why I feel like it's probably okay for me to give you extra homework. For me to say to you, you got to do your survey of all of the other parents that are out there. You got to understand your landscape. And I can get away with saying that and putting that work on your plate because A, I'm thinking of your best interest, and B, because I'm going to give you tools to make that easier to execute than it would have been in earlier times. So I think that's the biggest thing there. Playing off of again, I'm just repeating what Maggie said there. That was the right point there. When it comes to online engagement, we all know what's happened in the last 5-10 years here, right? I mean, everything has been moving online for 30 years anyway, and then we had COVID, and COVID kicked us all in the behind, and we wound up spending a lot more time online. The tricky thing here is the extent to which we can anticipate and see any kind of backlash to that. Again, just an anecdote from my end of the fundraising world. When it came to auction gala style fundraisers, of course, COVID killed them all. For 2 years, basically, nobody did them. And instead, we found ways to try to emulate them, to simulate them with online events, live streaming video of your auctioneer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It got us all through the pandemic, and everybody was happy that they could get through the pandemic and still cover the needs. As soon as the pandemic was over, everybody said, no, 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 no. We're done with those virtual things. We need to get back in person because I need to see my neighbors. I need to see my friends. I need to touch grass. I need to talk to actual human beings again. This is obviously going to ping pong, right? This is going to be a trend that goes back and forth, and we're going to have different moments as we go through this. Do I think that the trend is going to continue towards more and more online engagement? Yeah, it will. But be aware of the fluctuations that are in there. All right, I've gone on too long. I'll stop.
Thanks, Roger. All right, Maggie, additional thoughts on how tech has transformed K-12 fundraising and the role of online engagement?
Mm-hmm. Well, like Roger was saying, it is gonna go. It's a pendulum, and right now I feel like we're getting to, I don't want to say like a tipping point, but we are getting to a point where you need to make sure you're not losing that personal touch by making everything so tech driven that you're losing like the heart of what you're really doing, which is raising money for kids. I mean, like essentially it's such an emotional thing that's going on. So we don't want to lose that heart by making everything so speedy and cool and fast and high tech. The other thing I do want to say, so there's absolutely all the benefits for the tech. There's the automation, there's the efficiency, there's scaling up events, which I think is also something Roger's kind of hinting at, of like, you can do bigger stuff now because you have the tools online. I mean, we have a volunteer organizer, which used to take an entire person's role on your parent group. Now you can sign up volunteers with a click of a button, so you can do bigger stuff, which is great. You have access to much more data, so you can learn what works, what's not working. You can actually start to do strategic fundraising, which for a small PTO might seem wild, but like, yes, you can. And also, of course, the accessibility. The thing I do want to point out, though, like I said, we're kind of getting to a bit, I don't want to say tipping point, but we have to be careful also that this is online technology. You have to make sure that if you are using a third-party service, that they are COPA compliant, that they have, the online payment processing, the data encryption, all of that stuff. You just need to make sure you do your research when you're working with third-party vendors, that all of that is locked down. Because as more people move online, so do the data breachers, so do the phishing scams, so there are risks associated with that. So you just want to make sure that if you are trying to kind of move your fundraiser into the modern era and take it online, just do your due diligence with who you're working with, who you're signing on as a platform as well.
Thanks, Maggie. All right, Claire, anything to add in how tech has transformed K-12 fundraising?
We, like others on the call here at Impacts, we lean very heavily on technology to reach our audience and to prepare marketing materials. So we really try to make sure the school has everything they need tailored to that school, so that the PTO or the school administrators don't have to put in too much effort. But at the end of the day, there's always a burden placed on school administrators, PTO members, community members who are fundraising for a school. And I think, especially when you're talking about volunteer-led organizations like PTOs, you have to take it day by day. Don't try to do everything all at once. If you can be more measured in how you're onboarding to some of those technology solutions, it will help you evolve over time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? And so I just got a speaker request, and they sent me a PDF to fill out. And it wasn't even one of those PDFs that you can fill out on your computer. It was like, print this out, write down your answer, scan it in, and send it back. And I'm looking at this like, and it was for a volunteer organization. I'm like, it would be so easy for you to just like put a Google form together. It would be so fast. But then I have to remember, they are burdened with not just that, but every facet of their organization trying to digitize technology, like implement technology solutions. So my advice would be, think about all of the things that you want to evolve and just take it step by step, and don't try to do it all at once in one given school year. And the second thing I would just say is, we've learned a lot over the last 5-10 years about influencers online. And I think micro influencers within a community can be a really powerful tool. So as you're leveraging technology, do that. That's great. But also reaching out to those individuals who have a particularly loud voice within a community and asking them to be your advocates is a pretty low effort way to maximize results.
Thanks, Claire. All right, TJ, what would you like to add in how tech transformed K-12 fundraising?
What everyone else said, and I'll add a little nuance. Oftentimes when I work with organizations that put on events, excuse me, and do all the technology that's been referred to thus far, inevitably there will be 1, 2, 3, or 4 families, particularly in education, where they said, well, they came to this event, but we know they gave another nonprofit a larger gift. So even with all this technology, there is a need for a relational engagement where you sit down and discover their philanthropic aspirations and communicate. The compact way I say this is that they're not your donors, you're one of their charities, and that people are giving gifts because something about you, either overtly or covertly, is in alignment with their values, and that's the place to have the conversation. I hear that all the time, where a family will, has great capacity, but they only made a $10,000 gift. Well, of course, that's what you asked them for. But more importantly, they don't have the context what a larger gift will be able to do for those serves of the organization.
Thanks, TJ. Roger, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I did want to jump back in to add one thing. There has been, none of us on the call here are offering these services. Well, I sort of am, but there are groups that are out there, including a company that we've partnered with, that are using AI now to bring tools for professional philanthropy or professional development directors down to the level where schools can consider using them, including wealth screening tools. These are out there if you want to know more about the capacity of the parents in your school, perhaps more than is easily discoverable elsewhere. There are tools out there where you can access publicly accessible information about their giving habits, their wealth profile, and more. Kind of creepy, but it's out there. And if you want to be a really effective fundraiser, these are really good tools to help you understand what it is you're working with in your community.
Thanks, Roger. All right, this is the last of my questions before opening it up to our wonderful audience. So start submitting your questions so we can address the topics that are relevant to you and your team. But before I open that door, I want to sneak in my next question. And Claire, I'm going to have you start us off with this one. What mistakes have you seen schools make when it comes to their fundraising, and how can professionals on this call avoid these same mistakes?
Oh, mistakes. Well, I mean, it's hard to pass judgment, especially if you're not in that seat organizing those engagements. I think what I've seen, especially across our school partners, and we partner with schools across the country, where things tend to not work out as well, is when they're trying to engage the parent group in activities that are just not interesting. We've had a lot of schools that try to have the kids sell cookie dough or wrapping paper or whatever. And that can be a really successful fundraiser. I know there are some schools that make a ton of money doing that. And then there are other schools where the parents are just frustrated because you want their kids to become little like salespeople, right? And so I think right size or right fit for that particular school community is really important. And I think what we've learned over the last decade for sure is that the perception of value in what you're receiving in exchange for your donation has shifted. Of course, the most, I guess, desired donations are just a straight check. Like, thank you so much. We'll take that. We'll cash it. But in a lot of these situations, there's some sort of a trade-off, like there's an auction item, or there's the cookie dough or the wrapping paper or whatever. And when you think about those items that you're doing trade for that donation, if you're doing low value items that are not helpful to the parent, it's just like one more barrier in front of them that keeps them from donating. And so I'll just do a plug for Impacts. I'm not necessarily promoting Impacts, but what we decided to do is school supplies tied with that donation, right? Because school supplies are required and you get a value out of that, right? Cookie dough is not required, but school supplies they have to get. And so it hits a little different.
Thanks, Claire. TJ, over to you. Thoughts on mistakes schools make when it comes to their fundraising and how to avoid them?
Well, I'll share a little experiment that I do every year at this time. So I pick out 10 organizations that have no idea what I do for a living, and I make a small, modest gift to them, and I see how they respond. And I'm just to be very, in candor, I'm really disappointed. And I'm meeting them on their online presence. So I get an email back that is not personalized. It's horrible in its gratitude. And then on occasion, I'm delightfully surprised where someone is paying attention and they're like, wow, okay, you made your first time gift to this organization. Let's pick up the phone and call them. And usually I'll get a call from either the board chair or on occasion the executive director. And if they're a large organization, they have a director of development. So just be unhabitual in your approach and don't do what everyone else is doing.
Thanks, DJ. All right, Roger, you're up next. Any mistakes you've seen schools make and how to avoid them?
The theme that the theme that we've talked around a lot in this is the importance of demonstrating impact. And this ties back into an idea that I don't think we've referred to by name here, a concept of restricted versus unrestricted giving. I know that Claire just kind of addressed it in what she said, but putting the name on it, putting the label on it. If you ask for gifts without telling people what those gifts will be used for, that's unrestricted giving. Those are the loveliest of gifts. They allow us the maximum amount of flexibility. They're also the hardest to get. Restricted gifts, where you simply say, hey, look, there's cracks on the playground. We need to resurface the playground. Otherwise, kids will break their legs. This is an easier thing to raise money for here. And if you've got some of that, if you have, honest goals that the organization, the PTO or the PTA or the HSA or whatever organization you're running has here that can be framed as restricted giving goals, do that. Absolutely do that, because you're going to be more effective at raising the funds that way. The other thing I would say about simple mistakes is there's a perspective that those of us on the vendor side have that I think we would all love to convey to everybody out there on the PTO side, which is that with regards to all of the kinds of fundraisers that we are experts in, we can see them as systematic things, where there's a lot of little pieces that plug in, and you got to take advantage of these, and you put them all together, and things then just blossom and they become wonderful, and you raise a lot of money. But that does mean that we on the vendor side are always trying to encourage you out there on the PTO side to start acting early. Start planning early. Start planning at the beginning of the school year here. Start getting the people lined up here to do that, if at all possible. And I understand that much of the time it's not. But if I were to, say that, label anything as a common mistake, it would be starting too late. There we go.
Thanks, Roger. Maggie, what mistakes have you seen schools make when it comes to their fundraising and how to avoid them?
Yeah, so actually, I'm happy I went last because both Claire and Roger were hitting on something that I wanted to hit on as well, which is the kind of and TJ as well. Actually, I don't want to leave you out because you did bring this up. It's communicating that purpose, right? But then also seeing the kind of like reward or like, right, like what do you, not necessarily what do you get out of it, but what does your donation make happen? And there's two sides of that. So there's the purpose, there's what it's going to fund, a new playground, a STEM program, supplies for teachers, etc. And you do need to communicate that, absolutely. If you do have those goals and purposes, you should be communicating that. We have a visual pie chart that we have schools, they can fill in the categories and the percentages, and then that goes right on the school webpage. And so, donors, parents, they can see visually where the money is going. So that's super important. But then the other thing that is super effective are incentives. So this is another thing that, hey, if you give this donation and then this student meets this goal, guess what? They get to slime the principal, so that's like you're getting that kind of reward too by helping a student get something. And the flaw I want to actually talk about then is spending almost too much on incentive packages. So sometimes schools and parent groups, they feel like, oh, well, if we, give away 3 PS5s or whatever the latest technology is, then the students, of course, are going to raise the money to get that. And, yeah, maybe. But I'll tell you what, every single student will bring in $10 if they get to see the principal kiss a pig. And that doesn't cost you anything. Call up a farm, like they'll bring a pig, so like you don't have to. I think this idea of like, oh, well, if I'm going to, I don't want to set a huge donation goal because I don't have a big fundraising budget. That's okay. Especially specifically, I want to talk about for the incentives. You can have an incentive package that is free, little to no cost, just by providing fun, experiential, memories for the students. Those kids are going to bug their parents to help them meet their goal. Again, if they get to like have lunch on the roof with the gym teacher, right? Again, go buy some McDonald's. You do not have to spend that much money on this portion of your fundraising. And so that was just a little mistake sometimes we see. And all of these examples that I even said are from schools we've worked with. We have individual fundraising coaches. So if you work with us, you get a fundraising coach, and they have a crazy amount of ideas of these kinds of incentives. So I did like kind of ending on that note as well.
Thanks, Maggie. All right, we're officially opening our Q&A portion, and we had a question from Anna. Any suggestions for rural school in getting the school board and school admin on board to let PTO handle things? Our PTO just started back up last school year. After 3 years of no activity, we are still feeling the resistance and want to provide for our students and staff. Parents' resistance to help, monetary or volunteer, is holding us back as well, no matter how we request for help. I know we have panelists who answered this in the chat, but TJ, did you want to answer that question as well?
Yeah, I would recommend creating some kind of society impact circle, whatever you call it, and then communicate what an investment will do for the kids. And I work with a lot of boards, and even though it's communicated, and I don't believe it because it's never worked, even in my own personal experience, where board members will ask their friends for money. It's uncomfortable, and so communicating around a leadership society impact circle and what an investment a certain amount will do for those served is a really great way to do that. It's not about, hey, can you give me $100 versus, hey, can you make an investment in X, which will help serve, and communicate the impact. So the simplest way I can say it is the size and scope of your impact determines the size and scope of your income. And the challenge on the nonprofit side is to really communicate what that impact is in a variety of ways.
Thanks, DJ.
Just
Anyone else
can
want
I
to add to that? Yes.
Yeah, can
go
I
ahead.
can I underscore that with a little bit different language here? Stop talking about fundraising. It's obvious, Anna, that you are in a cul-de-sac where you've been when you talk about fundraising, you have people shut down, they're not answering you, the board is telling you to go away. So stop talking about fundraising. Start talking about the problems you need to solve. Start talking about the problems that you see at the school that money would help with. And and instead of saying what can we do to put on a fundraiser here to raise money for the school, it should be what do we do to fix the cracks on the playground? What do we do to bring in more computers into the library here? What do we do to meet this particular impact need here? If they're not listening to you talk about fundraising, stop talking about fundraising and then start talking about solving problems. I think that this gets back to something we've come back to again and again during the course of this meeting, which is people are going to respond more to the idea of an impact of a result than they are to just simply, I need money.
Thanks, Roger.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
I would totally agree with that. I think outlining your big, hairy, audacious goal, like what is it that you want to accomplish? And maybe there's small benchmarks along the way that you're impacting if the goal is so big that it can't be accomplished within a given, year time frame. So maybe you can be strategic about that, but it does have to be something that people generally care about, not just a couple of parents or a couple of teachers within the school. It has to be something that generally incites a level of passion amongst parents. But the other thing I'll just say, Anna, is it sounds like you are faced with a political challenge more than anything. I grew up in a small community, and I know how that goes. And it sounds like a buy-in challenge more than anything. And I guess I would be curious, what does it look like to find those influencers in the admin, in the teaching group, in the parent group, those people that others listen to? And then how do you get them to become stakeholders? TJ mentioned, like, how do you create a group? I would emphasize that. How do you get a small handful, it can be less than 10 people, but these people have great influence. How do you get them to agree with the trajectory you set in front of your group?
Thanks, Claire. All right. Unbelievably, the hour is going by so quickly. So we're going to wrap up this portion of the panel so we can stick to our schedule. If you have more questions for our panelists, please complete the survey that will be dropped in the chat to indicate which panelists you have questions for, and we'll make sure to connect you with them after the session. I've had such a wonderful time hearing from our panelists today, and I'm hoping to get one final piece of insight from them all in this speed round. And Maggie, I'll have you start us off with this question. Looking ahead to 2024, what emerging trends and creative strategies do you foresee shaping the landscape of K-12 fundraising, and how can schools leverage them effectively?
Yeah, great. So we actually have a shameless plug here, but we have a podcast called Fund Hub Radio. And this is actually the focus of the final episode that we'll put out for the year. So just a little sneak peek here of kind of what we are going to touch on in that podcast are some 2024 trends that we've seen based on what we've seen in 2023. And what we're seeing is specifically for online fundraising is making sure that you have diverse payment options. This is kind of a boring trend, but important nonetheless. Fund Hub, we just started accommodating PayPal, Venmo, all mobile wallets, all credit cards, right? We already talked about how cash and check donations are just in a continual downtrend, and that's just what we're going to continue to see. So it is just kind of a reality, just knowing that if you're not yet accepting online donations, that when you look for a platform, try to find one that has those payment options, because people are familiar with them, and they feel very secure with them doing, of course I'll give, okay, great, Venmo. Perfect. I'm already set up on it. And so that's going to be a lot more effective. We're already seeing much higher donations actually after implementing that this past year. The second, and Roger was already talking about this, but we're very excited to see where the emergence of AI goes when we're talking about fundraising and technology and the crossroads there. And so part of kind of the close cousin to that is just automation. And so we are really trying to embrace that. We just also put in place these automated emails that go out to parents that are triggered by different scenarios. So if they haven't brought in a donation yet, if their student is about to be a superstar and meet their goal, a week out from the event, one goes out to a reminder to share the webpage. So automation is also something that we're continuing to see grow when you're looking at fundraising through online solutions.
Thanks, Maggie. All right, TJ, thoughts on emerging trends and how to leverage them effectively?
Yeah, when you have a first-time donor to your organization, really make a big deal out of that. If you're bored on a Friday night and want to see the same data I am, the fundraising effectiveness project, it's rather abysmal. 20 years ago, it was about acquiring. Now it's about keeping. So if you have someone that makes a first-time gift, really make a big deal out of them, a welcome packet, a phone call from an administrator, or whatever that looks like, because it is more cost effective long-term to keep than it is to acquire.
Thanks, DJ. All right, Roger, what are some emerging trends and how to leverage them effectively?
The thing that I just wanted to throw down at the very end here, and this is a small thing, but it can be a big thing if you do it right, is recurring donations. They're something that is making their way down into smaller nonprofits and smaller schools here as part of various different fundraising programs. Of course, they've been a staple of large-scale nonprofit fundraising for years and years and years, but the technology's here. It's pretty easy to implement. It's pretty easy to use. It's fairly inexpensive. Merchant processing is always kind of an annoying cost, but it's not too huge. And schools can put together really nice pitches for a recurring donation program, something that's going to keep the teacher in Kleenex boxes throughout the year or whatever in a given classroom. You can do these, you can implement them. They're kind of amazing when you get them running and get them going.
Thanks, Roger. All right, Claire, final thoughts on emerging trends and how to leverage them effectively.
As the other panelists have mentioned, I think we are facing a pretty significant economic downturn, right? And the purses are going to get tighter. The wallets are going to be less open to sharing resources when we're faced with increasing costs in basic living necessities. And so I would consider, how can you tie your fundraising? If you're tying it towards any sort of a physical product, make it a product that's necessary and not a nice to have. And then in addition to that, think strategically about community and corporate sponsorship. In any economic downturn, there's always a winner. Who is the corporate in your region? Who are the businesses that are thriving and growing through an economic downturn? And how can you leverage them to incentivize giving through matches or maybe just straight donations? Just try to be strategic in who you're targeting based on the current financial situation.
Thanks, Claire. All right. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today. And I also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. All right. That is it for me. It has been a pleasure speaking with you all. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye, everyone. Thank you.